G'day mates, it's B-Buster here, and I would like to give Ana Luisa a big shout out for sponsoring this episode. So, are you looking for the perfect gift for yourself or for someone special? Then Ana Luisa has you covered. Ana Luisa provides beautiful, sustainable jewelry that not only looks terrific, but also comes with a great price tag. And for my listeners, I managed to pick up an even better current deal with a discount of 60% off. Their jewelry starts at the affordable price of just $39 with no luxury markup, and I can honestly attest to the quality. All you have to do is head to shop.analuisa.com/scared. I decided to get my missus a little something for her birthday this year, the willow necklace, and man, it was the perfect gift. It's super lightweight, has a beautiful intricate design, and looks great with formal and casual wear. And most importantly, she loves it. The company also offsets 100% of their carbon emissions, starting with the sourcing of their raw materials all the way to the disposal. Their shipping is excellent and comes with custom taxes included for international customers, and with a 60% discount to boot, you cannot go wrong. You can also check them out by following their Instagram or by subscribing to their newsletters, in which they always offer perks for engaged customers. I absolutely recommend checking them out. Head to shop.analuisa.com/scared. I really love them and their prices start at $39. They have new jewelry collections released every Friday and they're currently running the biggest sale of the year, so be sure to check them out quickly. Again, that's 60% off at shop.analuisa.com/scared. You can also find a link in the description within tonight's episode. So this happened about 6 years ago in a very rural town at a gas station. By very rural, I mean drive over an hour before you even see signs of civilization. I was 16 and I needed a job, and so I applied and was immediately hired at the gas station. I was supposed to work the night shift with another co-worker, Jules, until I got the hang of everything, that is. The first 3 nights were quiet. 2 customers max each night, and we spent most of our time talking about college. On the 4th night, around 11, we got our first customer, John. Now, everyone in town knew John, for he had some sort of brain damage and was effectively 6, but he was pretty big. We both knew that John liked Jules and thought that he was just great. He was sweet and funny, and on this night he had brought $10 and wanted a Snickers and Gatorade, which we gave him. He sat at a table that was out and started snacking while telling us about his new kitten. And after about 30 or 40 minutes, we got our second visitor, who would turn our lives upside down. He was a man in his 30s or 40s. He had black hair and a leather jacket, and he looked a bit like a greaser. He wanted a beer, which were locked up in another room and required someone to go and get it. Since I was new, Jules went to go and get him one. The man said hi to John and me and started trying to strike up conversation about school. Pretty soon he started to steer the convo towards more inappropriate things, I guess. Which, since I was 16 years old, a female, I found weird. He wanted to know if I had a boyfriend, if I was a virgin or not, or what kind of things I liked. I silently prayed that Jules would soon hurry up and return, and after dodging his questions for like 10 minutes, finally she did. She gave him his drink and he paid. But he didn't leave. He started talking to her about the same things that he had with me. She was 18, still young, but was older than me, thus she was more bold, I guess. So she shut him down and asked him to please leave. But then he told us that he needed gas, and so she unlocked one of the pumps and he went outside to get his gas. But 5 minutes later he returns, and it's apparently not working. He asks if one of us could go and help him out. Jules volunteered, but before she left she handed me the keys. I wasn't allowed them since I was new, but there was a piece of folded up paper there as well. On the paper it read, "Lock the doors and keep the lights on." I don't know if this is true for everywhere, but where we were, if the gas station lights were all on, including signs and decorations, something was up. It was a sign to call the cops, and she leaves with him, and I lock the door but stay by the window so I can see them. John joins me and starts asking questions like, what's happening? Where's Jules? Who is that guy? I explained the best that I could that I didn't know and that if something happened, he needed to run away very fast and get help. It had been maybe 20 minutes by now, and I couldn't see either of them. They were on the side of the truck facing away from the windows. The worst situations were popping up in my head, and I'm starting to freak out a bit, but suddenly Jules appears and I unlock the door to let her in. The guy's truck peels out of there and I lock the door again. She tells me that the guy had grabbed her butt and told her that she should come home with him, and of course she told him to get lost or she would call the cops. We spend about 15 minutes calming down and eventually we all leave together. I quit the next morning and I got a new job, but Jules stayed. It was about a month later too that it was on the news that she had been assaulted by a guy who came in late at night. They never did catch the guy, and whenever I go back home I see her and we talk about that night. She assures me that it was the same guy. She is doing good now and has a husband and a daughter, and John moved to Cali with his mum and cat. But I guess I'll never forget that night. And these days, whenever I go to a gas station or pass one, I always check to see if all the lights are on. So I currently live in the United States, but out of college I took a job in Australia on a horse farm. Then I was 21 and this was my first major job and I loved it. When I arrived, I moved into the original home on the property, which was smack dab in the middle of 400 acres. It was close by to the main house and the barns, but fenced and had considerable privacy, and no one ever bothered us. During my time there, we had an influx of seasonal workers coming and going, and the owner travelled frequently to other farms and overseas, so much of the time I would be left alone on the property in the evenings. The house itself was a moderate-sized ranch, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath or shower, and a laundry room. We mainly used the back sliding glass door to come and go from the house. From the day I moved in, the sliding glass door rollers were broken. It was old and heavy glass, and you had to lift it and push hard to open it. But the back entrance went to the garden, and it had nice views, and it's where we frequented for tea breaks and stuff. Now, as soon as I moved in, I immediately got feelings of being watched, but I wasn't hearing anything. A few weeks after the move, I had an almost lucid dream. I was laying in bed when I looked up, and at the foot of my bed stood a woman in a full-length dress, purple lace, high neck and sleeves. The woman looked middle-aged, maybe late 40s or 50s. Her hair was pinned up in a bun on top, and the only way that I knew that she was upset of my presence was the look on her face. She looked like she just wanted me out. She didn't say anything, didn't move, just stood there staring, and suddenly I awoke and she was gone. I had this dream too, many times while I lived there. The only thing that changed was her face. It seemed to soften the longer that I was there, but occasionally she looked angry or upset. After a time, I believed that she presided in the home with us and was just there. She didn't seem to do much around the house other than watch and show up in dreams. And she actually has little to do with this story, other than to give context to what I believe was in the house up until this point. But let's fast forward to 5 months later. All of my previous housemates have left and it's just me in the house now. I had a nice day at work on the farm. It was a busy and bustling day, lots of people on the property. It was winter in Australia, if you want to call it that, but the days were a bit shorter. I climbed into bed at around 8, which was normal for me, and usually I just sort of sit there with my laptop and play games, browse the web, or make calls home to family in the US. so I've been in bed for probably about an hour at this point, just relaxing. It's dark out now when suddenly I hear the sliding glass door push open and someone take 4 heavy steps into the house. It sounded like heavy work boots, and it actually shook the house a bit. Everything went suddenly quiet and I absolutely freaked. I jumped up and grabbed whatever I could find, which happened to be an old heavy shot glass. We didn't have a lot of cups there, and I'm not a big drinker. It's just what we had. And my alarm clock, which is one of those old ringing ones with a hammer between 2 bells. I guess I figured that I'd throw stuff at the intruder. I mean, no one ever entered the house without a knock, or at least a call out. And after a few minutes of getting my nerve up, I entered the hallway and walked into the kitchen. But there was no one there. No person, no boots, and the sliding glass door was closed. I never heard it close though, only open, and it makes a distinct sound. I opened the sliding glass door and called out. I grabbed a flashlight and beamed it around looking for anyone. I was panicking and looking for answers, so I desperately called the farm manager to see if he had stopped by at all, and he answered, and panicking I asked if he had been there, and he said no. I said, well, maybe the owner had stopped by looking for me, and he corrected me. He said that the owner was with him and that they were 2 hours away at the races, and that there should really be nobody else on that property. At this point, I was very unnerved, and I spent the next 4 hours calling family overseas and unable to sleep. Many weeks after this, I ran into one of the old farm hands who had left prior to this event, and he mentioned that he didn't have a real bed while he stayed at that house. We kind of laughed about it, and I was like, you should have asked for a bed frame or something. He slept with the mattress on the floor. The room that he stayed in was right off the kitchen and directly across from the sliding glass doors. And somehow we got onto the topic of the kitchen light being left on at night. I was always first to bed, so I never turned it off, and even after everyone left, I just continued to leave it on, not thinking about it. At least not consciously, maybe subconsciously, I guess. But he mentioned that he never turned it off either, and in fact would always turn it on before heading to bed if it wasn't already. When I asked why, he said that it was because he often heard footsteps in the kitchen, and he could even see a light under his bedroom door and wanted to see if anybody was there. He never saw shadows or anyone else in there for that matter, but it was creepy to hear that this guy, he had such a similar experience to the one that I did. I want to start off by saying that I really don't consider myself a big believer in the paranormal. I feel like a lot of the situations can be explained by logical science or something like that. But there are some things that simply just cannot be explained though. Like, there were 3 incidences in my childhood home that I still cannot explain to this day. And if someone has experienced anything similar, then feel free to give me some insight. So, when I was younger, maybe 10 or 11 I would say, we lived in a very large old Victorian house. The house had 5 floors, very long hallways on each floor and old wooden flooring. But there were always creepy sounds at night too, and weird power outages, but that can be attributed to the age of the house for sure. And we liked this house, a lot in fact. But the first incident, it happened in the attic. We called it the attic, but in reality it had a sort of family room, a bathroom, a kitchen, and even a guest room. The 3rd floor stairs have a landing that leads to the attic door, which takes you up a flight of stairs, and you come up to a long hallway on your left that leads you to the family room at the end of the hall. And there's a large window on your right that the moonlight comes through. When you enter the family room, there's a spiral staircase that takes you to the top floor, which is just a dark, small room that we never used, except for storage. And one night, I was playing with my toys on the stairs of the 3rd floor, right next to the door that leads to the attic. We had a cat at that time, and as I was playing, I heard scratching in the attic. Not wanting to get in trouble for her destroying a couch, I am the one who asked for the cat after all. I opened the attic door and walked up the stairs to go and find her. As soon as I reached the top of the stairs and turned down the long hallway, the scratching stopped, and the power to the house went out, and I was now in total darkness. I put my back against the window and sort of slid down and stared down the long hallway, terrified and waiting for the power to come back on. As I slid down, I heard a very loud, slow thump, and then another thump. The sound of someone walking down the spiral staircase. That sound is unmistakable too, because the steps are actually metal. The sound continued. Right behind the family room door, I heard each step. The steps eventually stopped. The family room door moved slightly, and immediately I felt this rush just come over me. I got so cold and my heart started beating in such a way that I felt like I was about to leap out of my chest. After a few seconds, the door bolted open and something started sprinting down the hallway straight at me. I couldn't see a thing, but I felt the movement, that feeling you get when something is near you. And I remember that was the first time I ever felt like true prey. And my heart, it was in my throat, but I screamed as loud as I could. And as soon as it got close to me, the rush went away and the cold, it left my body. My parents ran up the stairs, and after I told them what happened, they went to the breaker box and came up and looked all around and found no one and found nothing. But the handle on the family door room was broken, and the window behind me was actually cracked. Now, it's possible I cracked it when I put my back to it to slide down, but it was cracked at a height that I couldn't actually reach with my body at the time. Anyway, after that, I tried to avoid that part of the house for the most part. The basement, though, it was definitely the worst part of the house. It was one of those dreary, unfurnished concrete floor basement type of things. It was as large as any first floor of a house. I mean, truly massive too. And when you open the door, the short stairs look like you're going into a cellar. And when you come down the stairs, you have to walk forward for like several steps in the dark to find the string of the light and pull it. And even then, that light only illuminates the immediate area, not the rest of the basement. There are several lights like this the further you go, each one with a string to pull. To the left is the rest of the basement. It goes all the way back, and then there's a sort of cove tucked to the left where the dogs sleep. It's out of line of sight. Since there's a small window in the cove, it casts this sort of bluish-black light in the morning and nights from the moon as well. Now, one early morning, around 5 a.m., I had to go and feed the dog since my dad was out of town. I hated it too when it was my turn because that basement always gave me just a terrible feeling. I would always call the dogs to meet me at the stairs so I didn't have to walk down the stairs in the dark alone. I called for them, waited, and called again, but they didn't come and I heard no sound. So I walked down the stairs in the dark and held my hand out to find the string to pull the light like I always did. As I reached for the light, I saw movement at the end of the basement near the cove and my breath got caught into my chest. I pulled the light fast and the bulb popped with a quick burst of light. In that moment, I saw a man standing at the end of the basement. He didn't disappear like the movies though, and man, did I wish that he had. In the dark, with a sliver of moonlight from the cove window, I could still see him standing there with his back to me. He didn't move at all, and his head was sort of cocked to the left in a really sort of unnatural way, at an angle where his neck had to have been broken almost. He was probably 40 feet away from me, but as I stood there, trying to force a scream through my throat that felt like it was locked up, I couldn't look away, and in those few seconds, I saw that it was less of a man and more of a thing. It had white translucent skin and looked really gangly. I actually wet myself standing up too. I just lost all control. I think the peace snapped me out of it though, because as I felt the warmth on my leg, I started backing away, and as I backed away, it sprinted to the left towards the cove where the dogs were, and I ran upstairs. I actually chipped my tooth falling into the stairs, still chipped to this day as well, and I slammed the door shut, and I even locked the latch before I left. I called my mum down, and we called the dogs from the top of the stairs, but there was no response. We eventually went down there, and both the dogs were huddled together in the corner of the cove, and it took a good 5 minutes to get them to leave the corner and come upstairs with us. In fact, we had to pull them apart and walk them up with us holding their collars. The last one is short and simple, but probably the worst experience that I had in that house. So in that same basement, there's a furnace room to the left of the stairs, about 15 feet away from the stairs. It is dark, cramped, and has all kinds of luggage and extra supplies in it, and all sorts of just stuff. And the day before Thanksgiving, we were preparing for the family to arrive. My mother sent me to get the Thanksgiving table decor, or whatever it's called, and as I walked down the stairs, I saw the furnace room door was cracked open. At that, I sort of stopped dead in my tracks, because that door, it was never left open. We were always told to close it so that the dogs don't get in, and really, my parents made a big deal about it, to be honest. I stayed on the stairs too and just stared at that door. I felt the hair on my neck raise and my fists clenched out of instinct. And as I stared, in the crack of the door, I see a sort of smile and then an eye. The eye was so close to being human, but also not really. It's hard to explain it, but it was as though something had been observing humans to mimic them, but couldn't quite get its face just right. But with that, and the memory of what happened down here last time, I quickly ran up the stairs, and as I did, I heard the creak of the furnace door open further, slammed and locked the door, and that was the last time that I ever went into that basement. From that point on, my parents never made me go back in the basement again, and delegated my basement chores to my siblings. Even though I know that they didn't believe me, it was a truly generous gesture that I am forever thankful for. Funnily enough too, since we moved, I've never experienced anything abnormal in any of our houses. I'm 26 now. I have never had any issues with the paranormal since then. I like to rationalize by telling myself that it was fear and my brain was just playing tricks on me, but I don't know. A part of me just knows that it wasn't.